Ask me anything about politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. So, any questions that you have about politics at all, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I do not judge, I do not roast, and I do not debate. I do not believe that debates are productive, and so I am not going to do them. So, any questions you have, you don't got to worry about getting yelled at or getting debated or somebody trying to prove that you're less intelligent than other people. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. So, go ahead and throw your questions in the chat, and we will get to answering them. Everybody's welcome here. Republican, Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. You don't have to worry about getting yelled at for your political beliefs here. It is just going to be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. So throw your comments in the chat and we will get to answering them. Let's see here. Fletch, good to see you again, says, we are all on the decoy plane. I mean, essentially, yeah, if you're not in Trump's orbit, then you are potentially fodder for being sacrificed, unfortunately. Anything, there's no such thing as a dumb question here on Ask Me Anything about politics. So you can go ahead and throw your questions in the chat. No one's going to roast you for your question being too remedial or basic. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So you can go ahead and throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. And also, there's a lot of misinformation and propaganda out there. So, how do you parse out what's real and what's not real? Well, you ask here. You put it in my chat, and we talk about it, and then we can all go back to a shared reality where we're all at least agreeing on what's going on. If we can't at least agree on how to solve the problem, so throw your questions in the chat, and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. You do not have to agree with me about things in order to be here in the chat. So long as you are asking and disagreeing in good faith, then you can be part of the discussion and we can all take the temperature down maybe. And I'm not gonna yell at you and or call you any names or whatever. And so long as you don't do the same to me, then we'll all be copacetic. So yeah, Republican, Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirt. You throw your question in the chat, and we will answer it. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are an expert in politics or completely new to the topic of politics. No question is too complicated or simple for this live stream. So you can throw your questions in the chat, and we will get to answering them. This is not a debate show. I know there's a lot of really popular shows out there where people yell at each other and call each other names. That is not what this show is. This show is good faith engagement. This show is building bridges and understanding. So if you're a right wing person, you've always wanted to ask a left wing person a question without getting yelled at, this is the show for you, because I am not going to yell at you for whatever political beliefs you've had or how you voted in the past. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions here on the show. I know politics can be really confusing and intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. There's all these different acronyms and abbreviations and last names and extremely specific terms that everybody is just kind of expected to know what they mean. And this is the place where you can ask questions about it. And then, hopefully you will have a better understanding and you'll be able to sort of like parse things out and understand politics at a deeper level. Strategies and tactics says Colombia USA relationship, a little outside of my area of expertise, strategies and tactics. So sorry about that. Zindi says, I want to study international relations, but my concern is it directly linked to politics? I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that politics is intimately related to international relations. Garris says, why presidential election gone through electoral college instead of direct vote? So the history of the electoral college is complicated. There will be some people who will tell you that the electoral college was kind of like a compromise with the slave owning states in order to kind of get them on board with the Constitution. It's been a part of our country since its founding, and I think it's long since time that we retired it. Phantom, good to see you again, says, what do you think of the West accepting Ahmed al-Shara? I don't know who Ahmed al-Shara is, and I don't know about the West accepting them. Mike, good to see you again, says, is it anti-Jewish to stop sending money to Israel? No, it is not. In fact, I think it's the only morally right thing to do, and also it is the only legal thing to do. We already have a law that says that we are not allowed to send money and weapons. All right, Mikhail Meme, yes, the YouTube is working. We already have a law to say that we are not allowed to send money and weapons to countries that are guilty of war crimes, and the Netanyahu administration has been found to be guilty of war crimes. Ergo, it is illegal for America to continue sending them money and weapons. What is up, Mia? Great to see you again. Curbside G says, would the U.S. have the capability to defend against a mass drone surprise attack? I don't believe that. I think where the drones are launched for matters, because I don't think that the drones that we're worried about have the kind of long range capabilities to hit the American soil. You know, something launched from Mexico potentially, like that's a concern. But yeah, I'm not really. I don't believe that America has the kind of anti-drone technology that Russia and Ukraine have, or even Iran and Israel have, because they've been dealing with it. All right, let's see here. So let's see here. Ahmed al-Shara is the president of Syria. He's former Al Qaeda, right? Um, if I'm remembering correctly, then Ahmed al-Shara promised to be better. Like he said, I took over from Assad and we are going to run Syria in a way that is better and it's not going to be doing human rights violations. And I think it was right for the West to give him an opportunity to prove that he could do that. And also anything is probably better than Assad. So yeah, let me know if I'm speaking about the right country, because sometimes I get foreign policy confused. Former ISIS, yes, sorry, former ISIS. Thank you, Aslam. Natural says, why would I ask you if you're not in office? Because people can know a lot about politics, even if they don't have elected office. Okay. Ishmael says, why Trump obey Israel so much? Trump aligns himself with shitty people because shitty people can do corruption together. JC says, why don't we just vote libertarian? Because everywhere that has tried to be libertarian, those towns get taken over by bears. So libertarianism doesn't work. All right, Eslam says, what do you think about Jake Lang? Don't know who that is. Sigma Male says, why aren't you a communist? The same reason I'm not a socialist and the same reason I'm not a capitalist. I believe in a mixed model. All right, 133 says, is America fucked? Yes, but we're not totally fucked. Let's just say we're not pregnant. Luca says, do you think Mitch McConnell has seen the cinematic classic? Is he not listed as a co-producer on that classic? Isn't that interesting to get a Mitch McConnell joke about Two Girls, One Cup and not is he alive or is he dead? Okay, Average Joe says, what's your opinion on Schumer's recent comments about not needing to win Michigan to gain the Senate majority? Average Joe, I need to look into that, because just the way that you have described it is fucking infuriating. It does kind of seem like Schumer is giving up. It seems like he's giving up on Abdul El-Sayed, and it's like very, very frustrating. Like, I think if you asked Nate Silver about, the Democrats' chances of retaking the Senate without Michigan, he would probably put it at below 50%. I don't know. I'm not sure, but yeah, why are we not fighting for every fucking seat, Schumer? Like, what the fuck is the matter with you? It's not like that race is going to happen before the other races. Like, they all happen at the exact same time. That's so fucking stupid. Yeah, shoot it over in the Discord, Average Joe. I never click on the links during the live stream. All right, Mikhail Meme says, how do libertarian places get overtaken by bears? So that's a very specific reference. There was one town, I think it was like in the Northeast, that decided to do it like more of a libertarian style government. And so they moved, I believe, garbage pickup from the city was taking care of it to private companies were taking care of it. But then not everybody could afford to have their garbage picked up. So a lot of garbage was just sort of like hanging out around. And then bears started coming into the town. And then people couldn't live there anymore because there were so many bears. That is a half-assed remembering of a real story. So if you want the 100% accurate version, you should give it a Google. Claire says, "What's the next step in figuring out where is Mitch McConnell?" I mean, I honestly don't know. Andy Bashir has said that he has done everything that he can to compel evidence of Mitch McConnell's life or death or mental health capacity. And failing that, all of the levers of power are basically in the hands of the Republican Party, and they don't really give a shit about whether or not that seat stays empty until after the election. So it's like, yeah, I don't fucking know, man. Jenny says, "What do you think about Israel?" I support the citizens of Israel. I do not support the government of Israel. Netanyahu is a war criminal. He belongs in jail. Bit Evil, great to see you again. Says, "Considering the state of politics in the world, just how tired are you?" I would say that I'm more angry by the state of politics, and I'm tired because I'm a new dad. Eliza says, "Do you support abortion?" I mean, I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democratic politicians because Democratic policies decrease abortions. Republican policies don't. They just increase accidental pregnancies and also increase maternal and infant mortality. So if you like expectant mothers and babies to be dead of medical complications, then you should vote for Republicans. But if you actually want to decrease maternal mortality, decrease infant mortality, and decrease the number of abortions that happen, you should vote for the Democratic Party. Phantom says, "What's your thoughts on Elon Musk saying money won't be important in the next 10 years? Elon Musk loves living in the sci-fi version of reality. Like there's a guy named Ray Kurzweil who he's a futurist and he actually makes like very data-driven predictions about what the world is going to look like in the future, and he's actually been right about shit. Elon Musk is not right about shit. Elon Musk is basically like doing like Philip K. Dick cosplay in the news every day. Like, this is what I imagine the world is going to look like in 10 years. Zero data, zero evidence. He's and I think that part of it is, political. He's like, you shouldn't worry about climate change. You shouldn't worry about AI taking your jobs. You shouldn't worry about billionaires like myself manipulating the market and shit like that because money's not going to mean anything in the future. It's fine. It's fine if I decide to use an infinite money glitch to become the world's first trillionaire, even though my companies aren't profitable. Oh, right. Ben says, "Will you ever run for office?" It is unlikely. It's very unlikely. Disme says, "Am not from the U.S. What Democrats and Republicans stand for?" There's a lot of differences. Disme, short version, Democrats are for the people, Republicans are for the billionaire class. Brando says, "Thoughts on the Florida governor Republican primary results?" I don't remember too much about it. Wasn't it the guy who said that he hated Jews lost, right, Brando? Refresh your memory. Emily in the City, good to see you again, says, "Why do Republicans deny Trump divides the country and instead blame Obama?" Because it helps. Because it helps the Republican Party. They're not tethered to reality. They just say whatever helps themselves. And making it seem like their president isn't a corrupt, lying psychopath makes it easier for them to get reelected. Jowl says, "What do you think about the tentative to interfere in the Brazilian elections?" I don't know anything about that, so sorry. President All Might says, "Why do the Republicans want regulations on voting but not on guns?" Because the fewer people that vote, the easier it is for Republicans to win elections, especially if they can use those regulations to specifically target people that might vote against them. So, for example, in the SAVE Act, if you're a woman, the SAVE Act would make it harder for you to vote because your name would have to match your birth records. And if you got married and changed your last name, then you're going to have a lot more red tape and bureaucratic hurdles in order for you to be able to vote. And since women tend to vote for Democrats over Republicans, the Republican Party is like, all right, sweet, yeah, that'll probably redound to our benefit. Excellent. Also, I think that not regulating guns creates like a sense of chaos and danger in the world, and having all of those, guns out there creating a sense of chaos and danger in the world makes people vote more right wing because they just look for strong policies to protect them from the bad people. Jeremiah says, "Do you support uncapping the House?" I think what you're saying is adding seats to the House, in which case, yes. Doe says, "Why the Jews control your country?" They don't. Plouf says, "Do you support trans in women's sports and bathrooms?" Plouf, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't give a shit. I do not care if somebody who used to be a man decides to take a piss in a woman's bathroom, and I don't give a shit if somebody who used to be a woman takes a dump in a men's bathroom. Like, I don't care. The number of people that this issue affects is like 10 in the world. There's no trans women who've ever like won an Olympic gold medal, so it's not like people are transitioning just so they can get an edge in sports. Like, that's just not a thing that happens. It is not consistent. Like, there's no consistent methodology to this. Like it's not that every single trans woman is the best at every sport. It's just like, who gives a shit? Like, why are you letting billionaires take money out of your pocket to protect you from a thing that's not even fucking happening to you? All right, Short says, should alcohol be made more expensive? Yeah, why not? Mook Dog says, of brother, I don't know what that means. Funky Tron, do you think we should still be negotiating with the establishment or create our own path slowly, locally? I mean, we could do both at the same time. And in fact, it seems like that's what we're doing. Like, we are putting pressure on the establishment to be the kind of government that we want them to be at the same time as we are replacing politicians in the primary at record rates. Like, there's going to be so much more turnover in the House now. I think, what was it? More turnover than in the last 20 years or something like that. That's incredible. That's great. All right. Ghost Proctal Protocol says MAGA is a parasite like that bug in Men in Black. But also I don't believe in disparaging voters. So we're talking specifically about the MAGA politicians and not the MAGA voters. Nawa Fig Gabram says, what do you think about Indonesian president? Don't know anything about it. So sorry about that. Blue says, even if it doesn't affect everyone, shouldn't we all agree it should be abolished? But what about women that transition? Sorry, what about men that transition to women who want to play sports, Blue? What do they do? Where do they go? Bumblebee says, monarchism is when grandma feeds kittens. Communism when no iPhones. Fascism is evil, Trump, and ICE. I don't think that's. I don't think you have fully encapsulated what those political philosophies mean. Sharp Fire says, hi, bro. What's your opinion about Trump and him support Ukraine? It appears as though the Republican Party has managed to pressure Donald Trump into continuing supporting Ukraine in defending their country against Russian aggression. I don't believe that Trump wants to. I believe that he is worried about what would happen politically if he didn't. Okay, what is up, Artie? Ahmad Mognier says, why do you think Trump has agreed to launch a war against Iran? I think there's a bunch of reasons. I think it's mostly because he's not a very smart person. I think that he's a very simple-minded person. I think that he thinks that America can bomb their way into whatever outcome that they want. I think that Netanyahu and Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio blew a lot of smoke up his ass about how he'd go down in the history books as being the greatest president, the president who finally toppled the Iranian regime if he did this war. I think they were told that he could steal all this oil money and put it directly into his pocket. I think that he was buoyed by the successful Venezuela operation to kidnap Maduro and all the good press that he got from that. And I just think that his brain is kind of like stuck in the 80s, and he thinks that Americans, doing cool bombing missions in the Middle East is like the greatest thing a president could do. Like, he's not a very smart person. All right, Adam Spencer says, what's your opinion on anarchy? I have not heard a single convincing argument for anarchy. All right, Ghost Protocol says, hey, I'm just being honest about how I feel, but you do make a fair point, LMAO, but I do have a question. In terms of the midterm elections, even if we somehow manage to gain Democrats in the Senate and governors, what good does that do if their policies get shut down by MAGA or the right? Excellent question, Ghost Protocol. So what we're talking about here is how much damage can Trump do with Congress versus without Congress? How much more can we find out about what Trump is doing if we are controlling committees and controlling investigations into Donald Trump? What would it do to Donald Trump and his ego to be impeached another time? How many seats can we get in which we would be able to potentially impeach some of the people that are working in his cabinet, or even impeach or even remove some of them from their offices? If we get back the Senate, then he's not able to confirm any more judges. If we get the House, then he's not able to pass any reconciliation bills. Like, there are so many worse things that he's been able to do over these past 2 years because he has full control of the government that he would not be able to do going forward. So yes, it is true that we would not be able to pass our wish list of progressive policy agendas and democracy protections just with Congress. but it will still be a lot better. It's like it's probably the most important step in avoiding a full-on authoritarianism in America that we can do. All right, Mick Aquaman says, "Dude, tell me, why is Israel always starting wars? What do they want with Turkey now?" I heard that Turkey's changed their name to Turkey, so I'm gonna try my best to start saying it like that. Mick Aquaman. So I think the, you know, I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure that there are people who are much more experts in the relationship between Israel and Turkey that could give you more information about this. My gut is telling me that Netanyahu needs there to be these wars in order to stay in power. My gut is telling me that the bigger the quagmire in the Middle East, the more stuck he believes he can make America in those wars, and therefore entrench America's involvement and support with Israel in all of these wars. Um, the more chaos, the easier it will be for them to continue doing settlements in the West Bank and war crimes against the people in Gaza. It's like, yeah, it seems like a lot of those puzzle pieces fit together. A lot of those motivations are fully in alignment. What is up, Ines? Good to see you again. Ghost Protocol says, "I'm just concerned because we know MAGA will do anything to shut down Democrat policy." Yeah, but there are reasons to be hopeful, Ghost Protocol. But even if you're not hopeful, there's an expression: worry about everything, freak out about nothing. Like, yeah, let's be concerned about what the Republican Party is going to try to do in the future. But let's also work to negate that. Let's go out there and convince some people to vote for Democrats. Let's find all those non-voters and get them voting in the 2026 midterms. How happy would I be if we could get voter participation up to like 80% in the 2026 midterms? That would fucking tickle my britches. PTRK says, "What's your opinion on socialism? If you mean things like universal health care, I'm for it." Hex says, "Trump is my daddy." What a weird thing to say. 00, or this face says, "What's the best president that America had? I've got no idea. I think the best president in my lifetime was Barack Obama." Plouffe says, "What do you think about some liberals calling conservatives Nazis and fascists?" There is a weird thing that's been happening in politics for a long time where we kind of use the Schnazi and Hitler analogies a little too much. We throw them around a little bit loosey goosey. Republicans call Democrats Nazis, Democrats call Republicans Nazis, etc. But if we're being real, like, there are a bunch of very strong similarities between what the current Trump administration and Republican politicians are doing and what was going on in Germany in the 1930s. So I think that there are analogies that work better than other analogies. It is true that it's been said so much that it kind of like doesn't even register in people's brains anymore. But if you're paying attention and you know what to look for, like, it does look like that, like it is a pretty significant correlation, I would say. Alrighty, Phantom says, "Did you hear about MAGA accusing a young guy for being a rapist?" I don't know about that specifically. Mike Life says, "Have you seen the polling data of the Israel general election?" I have not. Is the opposition party doing well? Classic says, "Do you think Germany was right?" I mean, it depends on what you're talking about. Roscoe says, "Could Trump losing the midterms put an end to the Iran war?" Potentially, we would be able to remove his war power authorization for doing shit in Iran. The concern there would be how we sort of like enforce that, and I believe it would be better to give Congress to the Democrats, have them vote on a new war powers resolution where they would take away Trump's ability to continue this war, and then have that fight happen. Like, we can't win fights that we don't start. Doc David, good to see you again. Says, "Do you think Trump is crazy enough to use nukes in Iran?" I don't, but depending on how the midterms go, I think that he would be crazy enough to start a ground war. Silver says, "Do you think fucking dead hamsters is wrong?" That's not a question about politics. Silver, stop asking that question. Sky says, "Thoughts on Mamdani and housing policies?" I think Mamdani's doing a great job. I think let's try to do something to bring down the cost of living and the cost of renting an apartment and the cost of housing. And I love politicians that are doing shit about it, and Mamdani's doing shit about it. Funkytron says, "Do you think MAGA is dead, officially dead, as people move away distance themselves from MAGA own way. So long as they are in control of the American government, they are never going to be fully dead. Until the Republican Party suffers electoral defeats to match all of the fuckery that they have been up to since the MAGA movement started, then the MAGA movement will not be truly dead. All right. Coldy says, is it crazy to say that we won't have a two-term president anytime soon? I think it's a fair prediction. I think that when things are chaotic and, you give a good president a really shitty country to fix, or a country that has a lot of problems that they have to fix, if they don't fix them fast enough, then the American public tends to vote for the other party, which will just make the problems happen again. And then, ergo, if there's no period of stability, then there won't be a period of people being happy enough with whoever's in charge. So yeah, I could see that being a fair prediction. That's not a prediction that I would put my money behind, though. I'm not going to say that that's what I think is going to happen in the future. Okay, Ghost Protocol says, "Oh no, I'm hopeful. Don't get me wrong. Watching MAGA take some L's is kind of using. Get me wrong. Biggest thing is governors who are trying to win as Democrats entirely do not focus on Trump because they are giving him attention. He craves focus on policy only. Ghost Protocol, I think that you can do both. I think that the way you know if messaging is working is if you win elections. And so there are politicians who've made their entire thing being anti-Trump who have won, and there are politicians who've made Trump being their entire thing who've lost. And you can have an opinion about what you think is the better messaging strategy, but I don't know if that's really set in stone. I think it really depends on who you are, who your constituency is, what Trump has been up to lately. Like, I think a just not Trump message could have worked really well if ICE murdering Alex Preddy and Renee Good had happened like 3 weeks before the election. But, again, I think politics is way more complicated than that. Average Joe says, what's your opinion on Bernie Sanders admitting that even if Netanyahu is removed, his replacement is likely to be worse because of Israel's bipartisan support for genocide? Oy, 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 oy. Did Bernie Sanders say that? I mean, I sure hope he's talking about the government and not suggesting that there is bipartisan support within the citizenry that is in support of genocide. I sure hope that that's not what he meant, because that would be very upsetting. Book Club Alex says, why does the Department of War keep losing them? Well, they are the Department of Defense officially still, so maybe that's the problem. It's like a football team sending out their defensive side during offense. Like, obviously they're not going to be doing as good. Clean Fresh Edit says, why do Trump endorsed candidates keep losing primaries? He doesn't have the juice anymore, and arguably he never had the juice. Funkitron says, have you read or listened to the Communist Manifesto? I've been listening audiobook. Your thoughts? I think there's a lot of really cool ideas in the Communist Manifesto. I read a painfully scholarly book called A Spectre Rising that's kind of like a dive into the Communist Manifesto and the people that wrote it and the time that it was written, and like it wasn't never meant to be this like all-encompassing document that's like, here's how we can make communism work. It was more just like a bunch of radical ideas all put together by a bunch of really young and excited people. And I do not recommend that book unless you have a fucking PhD, because the language in it is fucking indecipherable. It took me like 6 months to finish that book. But yeah, it was never meant to be perfect. It was just meant to put forward a bunch of ideas. Okay, let's see here. Clean Fresh Edit says, who do you think is most likely to be the nominee? I have no idea. Nobody does. Mohammed El Sayed. I don't know what that means, and also stop spamming the comments with it. Okay, let's see here. John Abbott says, MAGA is also harassing the girl because she found out her face was being used for false accusations. She tried to put a stop to it, and MAGA did what MAGA does. Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, I don't know anything about this. Okay, so they've accused Dean Withers of SA. A Trump supporter stole the identity of a 13-year-old Australian girl and used it to accuse Withers of SAing her. Using it to prove that women shouldn't be trusted when they make accusations because some accusations are lies. Yeah, it's fucking hysterical that MAGA is doing this, because it's like even their own bullshit kind of like contradicts each other. So it's like Dean Withers, who is a left-wing person, did an essay. This is the proof, is this woman. But also, this is also similarly proof that women make up accusations. So everybody that's not us is bad. Isn't that interesting? All right, Diego says, is Donald Trump a pedestrian? There's a lot of evidence to suggest that he is, but we don't have anything, definitive. If you ask Representative Ted Lieu if there is definitive evidence that Donald Trump is a pedestrian in the Epstein files, he will tell you yes, definitively that information is in there, and that is the reason why Donald Trump and his handpicked attorney general slash personal attorney Todd Blanche is blocking that information from coming out. Funkytron, I have not read Conquest of Breads. Okay. Boo. Van says, what do you think about KRG? Don't know what that is. Coldy says, I predict GOP gets the Senate and governorship majority. Dems get the House. Okay. Is that what you want to happen, Coldy, or is that just your prediction? Mick Aquaman says, Israel just attacked Turkey in Syria. So what happens now if they exchange fire? Will NATO help the Turks? So it appears as though NATO is kind of just trying to throw cold water on things as opposed to getting fully involved. It's a moving target, so they could change it any second, but it does appear as though NATO is like, I know that we're supposed to get into a war with you right now, but let's just try to get this to stop instead. Okay, Mike says, the best thing a new president could do is release the full Epstein files on his first day of office. Would you agree? Definitely. I don't know if the president has that authority, though. I believe that is still the DOJ that would be responsible for that. All right. Somebody whose name I can't read says, Russia or Ukraine? I support the citizens of both countries, but I only support the government of Ukraine because the government of Russia is psychopaths who invaded Ukraine. Van says, KRG is autonomous region in Kurdistan. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. M2 says, can I ask you anything? You can ask me anything. I might not be able to answer. YSA says, is Trump good? No, very much so. Trump is not good. Visa says, which country has the best economy in the Middle East? I have no idea. Huandadon says, does Israel come to your dreams as well? No, I never dream of other nations. All right, Visa stuff spamming in the comments. Ari says, SEC has been bought. Tokenization will launder the biggest wealth transfer ever. I don't know what that means. AJ says, thoughts on Breece Hall this year? Don't know what that is. Short says, is the Trump harp thing as bad as Clinton Lewinsky? I would argue that it's a lot worse. Did you see that she had to sit in the trunk because they didn't have any room for her in the car or some shit like that? Like, goddamn, that's fucking embarrassing. M2 asks, does China want Kashmir? I don't know. Vasile says, are you left or right? I am left. Steven says, are you Democrat? Yes. Mike Life says, thoughts on the old guard falling apart? Good. They have ruined everything. Fucking get out of here, old guard. Go guard something else, you oldies. Okay, Jefferson says, what do you think about the president from Colombia? Don't know anything about him. PJ Washington says, Florida governor results. I don't remember who won or who ran. Ameliness says, what do you think about flangelism? Don't know what that is. Homegrown Boss says, when is it still racism in 2026? I think that when you are prejudiced against people because of their race, then that's racism, regardless of if it's 2026 or 2024. Okay, M2, stop spamming. The Fixer Mike says, looking forward to seeing the beginning of something good. Me too. iDog David says, how can Trump declare the Strait of Hormuz an American territory? He can't. Short version. Pick My Pose says, who would you run to essentially take over Trump's spots? Would it be Vance? No, it would not. Were you asking me who do I think has the best chance of beating Trump, or who do I think has the best chance of winning in 28? Okay. Carol says, anything about politics? Yeah, you can ask. I might not be able to answer. Joe says, who's the president? Donald Trump. Homegrown Boss says, why is Republicans getting healthcare? Excellent question, Homegrown Boss. So there's the official reason, and then there's the actual reason. Erickson, I don't do debates. Stop spamming the comments. The official reason is that the Republican Party's political philosophy is that the government can't do anything good, and so we should dismantle the government as much as we can. And so they take money away from social programs. They cut taxes for the billionaire class and their corporations, and they cut regulations for their corporations because they believe that trickle in economics and free market capitalism will solve all the problems that exist. So that's the official reason as to why they cut healthcare. The real reason why they cut healthcare is because they want people to be saddled with medical debts. They want people to be worried and stressed out about losing their jobs. They want you to be so desperate to keep your job, that you won't report sexual harassment, that you'll do things that are dangerous or degrading, that you'll be too scared to unionize, that you won't have any time to vote or learn about politics or anything like that. It really just is a game of like, let's make the lives of the 99% as difficult as humanly possible so that they can never have enough time, money, and energy to do the kind of massive organizing that would threaten our power structure. Oh, right. Emily in the City says, appreciate how instead of debating others, you educate them instead. Thank you, Emily in the City. Van says, do you answer questions about USA military in the Middle East? If I know the answer, then I'll let you know. Opposed Chimera says, Jared, how many genders are there? I don't know. I just got here. Mike Life says, are the Epstein files bigger scandal than Watergate's? I believe so. I think it's a pretty easy thing. Yeah, I think so. And I think the part of the reason why it's a bigger scandal is that it's not just one president that is implicated in that. It's like a lot of the richest and most powerful people in the world. It's not even just one country that's implicated. It's many people in many countries. Short says, is Hakeem Jeffries a necessary evil to fundraise for the DNC? Ooh, good question, Short. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. Is Hakeem Jeffries doing a better job of fundraising than if we had somebody who was a better House Speaker? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I often feel like we assume that the centrist corporate establishment Democrats are worse at their jobs than they actually are. Because oftentimes people that actually work in government will tell you from behind the scenes, like Nancy Pelosi is a fucking dope ass legislator, or Chuck Schumer won the last shutdown fight, or Hakeem Jeffries kept our coalition together for whatever X, Y, or Z to stop ICE funding or some shit like that. So yeah, I definitely think we should replace him as speaker just because he's not a good what do you call it? He's not a good communicator for the party. But yeah, would I believe people if they came out of the government telling me that Hakeem Jeffries is way better at his job than he's given credit for? I would 100% believe that. All right, Happy Noticia says, what's MAGA? MAGA stands for Make America Great Again. It is the official slogan of the Trump affiliated wing of the Republican Party. It is sort of like Trump's political party. It's Trump's political philosophy and Trump's fan base. Karate Chop says, why is the Democratic Party broke no money? So the Democratic Party is not broke no money. The DNC is broke no money. And the reason why the DNC is broke no money is for two reasons. Number one, the chairman of the DNC is a guy named Ken Martin, if I'm remembering correctly. And he did not spend money smartly. He basically did like a everywhere strategy. So he was spending a bunch of money like funding grassroots organizing in Guam, which is a place that has zero political power. So it's like, I mean, I guess I kind of understand the purpose of that, but like maybe there was a better way to spend that money. And also, I think that a lot of people don't have any faith in Ken Martin, and so a lot of the big money donors are not donating to the DNC right now until they have a new chairperson. Erwin says, what is your opinion about U.S. foreign policy for Asia Pacific, specifically the first island chain? I mean, it's difficult because it changes for every presidential administration. I generally believe that most U.S. presidents have had way too much of a you guys have to do what we say kind of a foreign policy, especially where Asia is concerned. Um, it I do think that it is the right thing to do to protect all of those outlying nations and territories from being taken over by China. Yeah, more than that, I don't feel qualified to talk about. Tom says, could the Guam money have been used to influence the military mail-in voters? Potentially, potentially. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting idea, Tom. I don't know about that. IRL Multiverse says, do you think the terrorist weapons were politicized? I don't know what you're talking about. DJ Carey says, I think USA should use foreign oil and save ours if needed. We still have some. I think, DJ, that we should transition to green energy and then we wouldn't have to worry about foreign oil. What do you think about that, DJ? Double Dunn's Garage says, neither party is worth much. Maybe it's time for an independent administration. I disagree with that, Double Duns. So what you just said is what I call the both sides paradox, where people will make these like narrative statements like both sides are equally terrible or they're both worthless. And what that does is it makes it seem like the Republican Party is better than it actually is, and the Democratic Party is worse than it actually is. And so I don't allow people to just spread the bullshit both sides narrative on my live stream. You can either ask a question or you can leave. But if you're just going to make statements like that, then you got to go. Goldie says thoughts on nuclear energy. I think that it takes too long to build nuclear power plants. There's like a bunch of new nuclear technology out there that I think we should 100% be investing in, but we should not be closing down nuclear facilities until we are on fully renewable energy. And also, we should not be building new nuclear facilities because they take 10 years to build. DJ says our military equipment is dependent on oil, would take years to retrofit to solar energy. Okay, well, let's do it now, DJ. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. Grady Chop says, will we ever be able to stop the sale of our politicians? Yes, if we vote out the Republican Party. If you look at the administrative history of the Republican Party and the Supreme Court decisions of the Supreme Court justices that have been installed by Republican politicians, it becomes clear that the number one priority of the Republican Party is to make corruption easier to do, more legal, and harder to find. So if you want money out of politics, you have to vote every Republican politician out of office from president to dog catcher because they are intimately involved in this scheme to loosen campaign finance regulations so that the billionaire class can purchase politicians. All right, somebody whose username I can't read says, "What do you think about Netanyahu?" I have been a Netanyahu hater since 2008, since before 2008. So, all right, 839. Jews do not control the USA. LOL says opinion expanding of military American railway system. I'm for it. Avi says, you probably got this question a lot, but what's your opinion on trans women in women's sports / spaces, etc.? I think the most important thing to recognize in this issue is how the Republican Party is weaponizing it. The Republican Party is suggesting that what the Democratic Party wants is for men to be able to punch women in the face in women's boxing leagues. And that is not what the Democratic Party wants. The Democratic Party's official position on this is such a tiny issue. Like, why don't we just let each individual school board or league deal with this themselves? Like, I don't need to know why we need to make this a national fucking issue when this issue affects like 12 people total. My personal opinion is I don't really give a shit. Like, sports aren't necessarily fair. Like, okay, that person was born a man and they transitioned, so maybe their genetics are a little bit more favorable. Well, Shaq is like half Goliath. Do you think it's really fair that Shaq plays in the NBA or used to play in the NBA? Yeah. Just because somebody was born a man does not automatically make them dominant in women's sports leagues. I would get my ass kicked in women's sports, even though I was born a man. Anyways, Funkytron says the DNC primarily serves the establishment. How can we reform, change the DNC? Mainly priorities. Replacing politicians in the primary is the number one way that we can affect the DNC. Okay, Credit Chop says, have you seen the South Park episode about Macho Man Randy Savage as transgendered? No, I have not. Honestly, the South Park guys have always really bothered me in their aggressive centrism, where they're like, we can make fun of both sides because both sides are ridiculous. And I'm like, are they though, man? Like, they had that whole episode like making fun of Al Gore for giving a shit about climate change. And then decades later, they had to do another episode about how they were wrong about making fun of Al Gore for talking about climate change. And it's like, I don't know, man. Maybe if you were paying attention, you would have seen that this was something, that this was not a both sides issue. All right, let's see here. Heinz says, do you think it will be possible for the U.S. to actually develop a multi-party system and maybe even implement ranked choice voting. Definitely, yeah. But the only way there is through the Democratic Party, because the Republican Party is hostile to the idea of expanding the electoral process and having ranked choice voting. The Republican Party benefits from spoiler candidates, so they're not going to do anything to keep spoiler candidates from being on the ballot. All right, John Abbott says Michael Phelps literally has definable genetic benefit over every other athlete in the sport. The only way he could be more biologically superior is if he had webbed hands and feet. Should he have been banned and all his medals stripped away? Agree. Shrekky says, what can you say about Georgian politics and its government shift to Russia? No government should be shifting towards Putin. They should be shifting away. Streets Ahead says the Democrats and Republicans only agree on one thing, exploding people across the globe. That is inaccurate, Streets Ahead. I would happily go into more detail for you if you like. But I do not let people spread the both sides bullshit narrative on my live stream. So if you say shit like that again, I'm going to boot you. Shark says, can you explain why DSA wants to abolish the Senate? Sure. The Senate is bad for two main reasons, I would say. Number one is that it is wildly imbalanced. Like a tiny nation like Iowa, a tiny state like Iowa should not have the same number of senators as massive states like Texas and California. So what do we do to rebalance the Senate? Like, do we add seats? Like, what's the fucking deal? Additionally, the Senate has a lot of barriers towards actually getting shit done, like the filibuster. So there's been a lot of great legislation that has died just because one senator emailed and said, "I'm going to filibuster that," and then that is just dead. You know, like the 60 vote threshold has been very difficult to reach, and therefore a lot of change has been very slow and seemingly impossible. So I think those are like the two main reasons. There might be others. I am unaware of what they might be though. Hold on a second. Mia and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. All right, Dionysus says, what are your opinions on ICE? ICE is a rogue agency. They are acting illegally, barbarically, disgustingly. They're a walking human rights violation. It is my personal opinion that organization is rotten from toe to tip and needs to be defunded and abolished. If the Democratic Party decides instead that they can reform ICE, then fucking do that. But it cannot exist the way that it is. The Republican Party, I guess, is fine with a rogue masked government agents patrolling American streets and just murdering people left and right, snatching people up with zero due process, holding people in fucking torture prisons where they're being force-fed moldy food that's fucking maggot infested, not giving them the proper medical care that they deserve. And it's not like these people did anything fucking wrong. Like most of the people that ICE is taking have done nothing wrong. They're taking legal residents, they're taking citizens, they're taking veterans, they're taking Native Americans. It seems like they're doing this like, you know, like what's the type of fishing where you just throw like a big net into the ocean, like trawling? And it's like, yeah, you get a lot of fish that way, but then you also kill a lot of like endangered species and you destroy a lot of coral reefs and shit like that. Like that's what ICE is doing, but with humans. It's disgusting. It's barbaric. It's immoral. It's illegal. And the fact that the Republican Party is not only allowing this to happen, like, you know, the best case scenario is that they're fucking asleep at the wheel, in which case they all deserve to fucking lose their jobs. But some of them, I believe they think that what ICE is doing right now is great. And those people belong in jail. That is fucking psychotic. Triska, Tagurit, and Mia, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. The Mitzi says, hey, it's me. Nice to see you, Mitzi. Thank you for being here. Mizzy says, it's Verity. All right, sweet. Have we met before, Verity? All right, Sophie says, haven't seen much from American politics in the UK recently. What's been up? We're kind of on summer vacation now. It doesn't mean that there's not incredibly awful shit that is happening, but potentially things have calmed down a little bit, or at least appear to have calmed down. So I'm just gonna block people right away if they don't ask a question, but instead just do like pro-Trump propaganda. Just letting you guys know. Okay, let's see here. Ghost Protocol says, when you said Buster, I thought of Brian from Fast and Furious LMAO. When did I say Buster? Because the Buster kept me out of handcuffs. Just watched Triple X last night, funnily enough. Mike Life says, "Where do you think the Democratic Party has lost touch with the working class?" It's a really good question, Mike Life. I think that it is it's interesting. And it's kind of a big topic, I would say, because as I'm thinking about like what the answer to that question is, like three different versions of the answers is popping in. So number one, I think that some of the rhetoric around the Democrats losing the working class is inaccurate because a lot of working class people have eschewed the Democratic Party for cultural reasons as opposed to for policy reasons. Where the Republican Party has very successfully propagandized themselves into being the party of patriotism and the stars and stripes and football and beer and muscles and monster trucks and all the fun shit that the working class likes to do. You want to go out and fucking get hammered after working your job where you fucking do manual labor and tough use big fucking fun machines all fucking day? Well, that's that Republican shit, my guy. So that's like reason number one. Number two is that if you look at the shift in the Democratic Party towards a more like centrist, corporate billionaire friendly neoliberalism that we saw like during the Clinton administration, it's not because the Democratic Party wanted to do that, it's because that's what people were voting for. Like the Reagan administration properly brainwashed America into thinking that anything to the left of Reagan is communist socialist bullshit, and that tax cuts for the wealthy really are going to bring wealth and prosperity to everybody in America. So people weren't voting for, you know, Dennis Kucinich, and they weren't voting for, the AOCs and Bernie Sanderses of the day. They were voting for more centrist corporate chills like the Clintons, and so the Democratic Party was meeting the American people where they were, and unfortunately, it was easy for people then to color them as being out of touch with the working class because they had policies that were only slightly more beneficial to the working class than the Republican Party. So those are two ideas that I had. Yeah, I think this is more. There's more there. You could probably write an entire book about that, but that's just off the top of the dome. Okay, Yunj says voting to work your life away so billionaires can exist. All right, Sophie says the fact that people can see immigrants as anything but human is disgusting. ISIS foul and worrying. Yes, agree, Sophie. Pollywog says, did you see Maura Healey passed abortion law allowing full-term abortion in Massachusetts? I don't believe that that's real, Pollywog. I don't think that that's real, Pollywog. That seems like a fake thing. Are you talking about if the fetus is not viable and you need to protect the life of the mother? That is the only full-term abortion that has ever been legal in any state in the union. Pollywog. Yeah, just doubt. Just full on doubt. I don't think that's a real thing, Pollywog. You're in question jail, Pollywog. Either ask a question or leave. DJ says, yes, billionaires are a part of capitalism. Way better than socialism. What does that mean, DJ? That doesn't make any sense to me. Mike Life says, is it cause of democratic failures? I don't think so. Mike Life, I don't think so. Augustine Anthony says, doomsday clock thoughts. It's not really a real thing. It's like somebody's like doing math just to figure out how close to doomsday we are, and then they move it like further or not further away. Yeah, it's a metric. I don't think it has more or less substance than other things. Image Friend says, are you anti-abortion? No, I am pro-choice. I'm happy to go into more detail on that if you like. Ein says, if I see how the Democratic Party acts, I get the impression they are interested in keeping the status quo. Clinton versus Sanders. Do you think only progressives, Democratic Socialists will bring change? Won't the Democratic Party try to work against them, like they did with Sanders? Really good question, Ein. So my view on this is a little bit complicated. I think that there are Democratic politicians who, if you look at their rhetoric and if you look at their governing history and you look at who they have worked with in the past, you would probably guess that they were part of the like centrist establishment, corporate chill version of the Democratic Party. But sometimes Democrats have made those decisions and done that rhetoric because that was what was politically viable at the time. I believe that the Democratic Party is filled with politicians who would vote for progressive policies if they believed it would not doom the Democratic Party to electoral failures in the future. And every single time a progressive defeats a centrist in the primary, and every single time a progressive beats a Republican in the general, they are showing those corporate Democrat shills that the political environment has changed. Now, there is some truth to those centrist Democrats being worried because all of the media is owned by the billionaire class. So they're obviously going to, and we have a lot of evidence that they have done this, color the news in a way to make more progressive candidates, make more progressive policies seem worse. You know, they are largely responsible for the both sidesing of the American political system. But I think that as these candidates are doing a great job, and as these candidates start getting better and better press from independent sources, that those politicians are going to recognize that it is more politically viable to do the thing that you want to do instead. Now, are there the worst kind of Democratic politicians? Are there the kind of Democratic politicians where they really truly believe in being corporate shills and they believe that it is more dangerous to allow a progressive to win than a Republican, and that they would rather keep their job than threaten it by making room for the progressive wing? 100% those people exist, absolutely. But I don't know that we know 100% which Democrats are which. And so the answer is you vote them out in the primary, and, you know, then you vote for them in general. Because even having a corporate Democrat in one seat is better than having a Republican in that seat, because a corporate Democrat empowers a progressive Democrat in government. Alrighty. I hope that answered your question, Ines. Let me know if I left anything on the table. Alrighty. Mike Life says, if the Dems support working class, why does it back policies that destroy local factories, energy jobs, etc.? Really good question, Mike Life. So we're talking about a pretty complicated issue. We're talking about something that potentially is bringing costs down. We are potentially talking about a way to take dangerous jobs away from Americans and give them to somebody else. Now, is one of the knock-on effects that factories close down and then people's communities get fucking destroyed? Yes, 100%. Responsible governments should be able to fix that problem. Like, if you don't take your eye off the fucking prize, you can make sure that a town doesn't die just because you moved the factory jobs to another country so that those goods can become cheaper for Americans to be able to purchase. Now, in the long term, maybe that's not, maybe it turns out that that wasn't the best move. Like, maybe some of that globalization ended up hurting the working class more than helping, because there wasn't that follow through in the government, either on the state government or the federal government or whatever. But there are ways to sort of like do both, in my opinion. And I think that at the time, that was the policy that America was looking for. America was looking for a policy that brought down costs. And I guess we were a little too, I say we, like I was part of this decision. I was 13 years old at the time. I think that maybe we were a little too optimistic about how easy it would be for people to transition into other industries after those factories were closed down. I also think that we gave corporations way too much leeway, where they're closing down these factories and they were not at all responsible for what happened to their employees afterwards. I think that that was some legislation that we fucking left on the table, where it was like, all right, you can close down that factory and move all those jobs over to fucking Indonesia or whatever, but you have to do something with that town that you just abandoned. You know, if you allow me to go on a little bit of tangent as we were wrapping things up here, I watched that movie Nomadland a little while ago. And it's that movie that's like half narrative fiction, half documentary, because they have like people that actually do live that van life in it. But, you know, you got a couple actors in there telling the story. And a lot of people look at that movie and they take different things away from it. But what I saw was a a dramatic criticism of that kind of extractive capitalism. Because in the main character, who the actress, I can't remember her name right now, she was this woman who never wanted to settle down, but she met somebody. He moved to a factory town, and then she, despite her desire to be a free spirit, she planted her roots and she created a life that she fucking loved. And then that factory closed down and it broke her fucking heart because the neighbors that she loved had to move and the stores that she used to go to closed down. And now it's just a fucking ghost town where she had this beautiful, perfect life. And it killed her husband, if I'm remembering the story of the movie correctly. Like he never recovered from it or some shit like that. Maybe I can't remember what happened. But yeah, this like the last shot of that movie is so fucking haunting as she goes and revisits the bones of the house that she used to have, of the life that she fucking used to love. So yeah, like I have a little bit more sympathy for politicians who were working at a time when progressive policies were not going to get you elected. And a lot less sympathy for corporations that were making money hand over fist and just tossing American citizens into the fucking garbage. Anyways, all right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your support. Thank you, Triska and Mia, for helping me reach my gift goals today. There are lots of ways that you can support the show. If you like what I'm doing here, if you think it's productive, if you think it's helping, you can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a fan on TikTok. You get like more updates or something like that. Or you can be a super fan on TikTok. Being a fan is free. Being a super fan costs money. You can be a subscriber to my Twitch channel, which costs money. Or if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you zero, helps me out a ton. So I'd really appreciate it if you did that. Even if you're watching on YouTube or on TikTok, you can go over to Twitch, sign up to subscribe to my channel with your Amazon Prime account. Again, costs you zero. Then you just go back to watching me on TikTok or YouTube or wherever you like to watch me. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, though there is a very fun incentive at $10 a month if you have that kind of money to throw around. Any questions that you have that I was not able to get to on this live stream, then please do not be shy about reaching out. You can hit me up via DM. DMs are open. You can email me through my website. Link is in the bio. You can hit me up on my Discord channel. I want to be a resource for you. I want to be a resource to get you more involved in politics and more informed about politics. So whatever I can do, use me and abuse me. Check out the Discord for a great community and also for great recommendations for books and civic action. And if you're like me and you're looking around and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this shit is a fucking nightmare. Like, how do I get out of this? The answer is to do something. And if you need to know what to do, you can go over to the Discord channel. You can ask me personally. I can try to help find you some work to do. But it is only through us doing the work that we're going to be able to get out of this, because the billionaire class is extremely powerful. They have all the resources. They have all the fucking power. But what we have is numbers of people. We are way more people than they are. And if we can all fucking organize together and recruit and do the work together, then we can get out of this. We can have a better fucking country. We don't have to fucking live like this. We don't have to live worried about the next medical bill or paying rent or whether or not we're going to be able to afford to send our kids to college. Like, we can live in a country that takes care of its citizens. And the only thing we have to give up is billionaires. Like, what are they fucking providing? Besides extracting all of our dollars and putting it in their fucking pockets. Like, what is it that having one billionaire accomplishes that having 500 millionaires would not accomplish? And we can keep that going, like we could do 250 millionaires, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, guys, if we do the work, we get out of this. If we do the work, we win. And we can live a better fucking life. All right, everybody. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have an excellent Wednesday, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.